to express our appreciation for their service. Chuck Tackett, James Happy, willingness to serve on the Scott County Ag Extension District Board. So we're going to administer the oath so they can be official. So I will read the oath and then ask you to affirm after I say so help me God. So if you'll raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute to the best of my ability the office of Scott County Extension District Board Member according to law. And I do further solemnly swear that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted the challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as a second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. I do. All right, thank you very much. You all are official. I promise to do my bidding on every stack. We're all looking there. Can we get a hey, I know you will.
Yeah, can we get an official picture?
How are you?
Good. How are you? Merry Christmas. Chuck.
Hey, Chuck. Come on, Chuck. Did you go ahead
What I haven't realized till now is on the north side.
Our work session into work session, and we'll get started. But we're going to start it with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all would join me. Let us pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Appreciate everyone being with us, and we have guests from our Lytle's Fork Advisory Board with us today, and Temple Jewett is going to present a PowerPoint update for the court about the advisory board's work. And Temple, you think that one's on?
Yeah.
Very good.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the work of the advisory board, and excited to hear from you.
Thank you, and thanks for letting us be here today, as always. This has been a real experience being on this board. I've learned a lot about this property, and the more I learn about it, the more I realize what a treasure this is for the county. It is something that is big in terms of across the state, anything matching it. And one of the things I'll point out, do I just say next slide, or how?
Next slide, and he'll shift you.
Okay. And these are just some of the general characteristics of the property. Obviously, most of this you may know, but it was acquired during the 80s and 90s. It was originally designed to be reservoir. That obviously didn't work out, not to anybody's fault other than outside forces. Approximately 1,400 acres. It is the second largest municipally owned forest in the state, behind Louisville. And that's pretty big, especially when you start thinking about the tourism and so forth that's going on in eastern Kentucky right now, and how big a thing that is. So that is a big thing to realize and recognize. If you don't know, it runs from Skinnersburg at the south end. You look at the map over there. At the very bottom, you'll see Skinnersburg Road, and it goes all the way up to Coppage. You can see the darkened portion of the map that shows the northern tip of it. Gaines runs through the middle of it. So does Stockdale. Of course, Stockdale's now closed. And it runs through the southern half, right along the creek, fortuitously, really. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then you have bike trails that are on the west side. You see down at the bottom the blue lines and the orange lines and the so forth. Those are all marking the bike trails, which we have maps for and allow us to do that. On the other side of the creek, and actually both on the east and west side, you have the horse trails. And they encompass most of the rest of the property. So you can see a lot going on there. And next slide, please. It's been a volunteer effort so far, and I really have to give kudos to both the Kimba Group, the Riders Up Group, the horseback riding community. When you see what is out there and how organized it is, this has all just been through volunteerism. And it's really built something nice that we can start with and build on. And it's allowing us to get pretty rapid awareness and usage of the property, which is going to help, I think, really promote this as a destination. So a current plan is to build on that. I think our mission is to continue it in its current character, is to explore things like reforestation, some conservation things, allow maybe places like UK, Extension, other places that might have an area to work with and help us figure out how to make it even better. The problem is volunteerism is probably not going to keep up with what we're trying to do. If we want to promote this, if we want to increase traffic, if we want to increase usage, it's going to outpace the volunteer efforts. And as you can see, you've got some pretty hefty volunteer commitments. You see the walking bridge there. There's a bench there. This constructed by David Crabtree and the Riders Up group. You see, you probably don't know who provided some of these pictures to me, but you see Roy Cornett in there doing volunteer work.
I didn't know he was a
shoring
part-time model as well.
A part-time what?
A part-time model.
Oh, is that right? We'll have to talk about that. So shoring up the trails, and then, of course, big equipment in there. So it's a big task. I mean, you think about these trail clearing and all this sort of thing, you're really getting into, okay, what do we want this to be ultimately? And we're not there today, but part of this, the reason we want to come here is to kind of give you the sense of what our long-term view is and make sure that you all agree with that. And instead of just coming in here and say, hey, we'd like to do this or do that, if we can kind of give you the sense of the overall, that's what our goal is. When it comes to making this, I think, something that is safe, attractive, clean, interesting, I think we're going to run into enforcement issues and monitoring issues and maintenance issues, all of which, again, are kind of part-time. Now, when I say that, I don't want to diminish what JR and his group are doing. He's there. Hey. They're clearly doing their share out there too, but obviously it's not on the beaten path, and it's a big lift to maintain that area. And we've had to contract out some of the mowing. We've had to, do some other things just to keep up with it. And again, I think all to positive effect, but we have to be realistic about where this is going, in my opinion. So rules enforcement, maintenance, stewardship, ultimately will require on-site monitoring and presence and possible dedicated staffing. Now, I'm not talking about today, but I think we have to look at this. If we want to look at this like a Ravens run, and by the way, this is twice the size, Michael was telling me earlier, this is twice the size of Ravens Run if you've ever been there. So that tells you, the potential for this property. If you want it like that, or a Pinnacles or something like that, then these things are going to happen. It's just the reality of it. So those are just some of the challenges. What we've done, I think we've done a lot. And as I'm going through this presentation, it was actually a good exercise for me to realize that a lot of things have happened. But I think we're starting to come to a point where it's probably going to require investment. Next slide, please. This is just some sample, and I'm sorry you can't see that very well, but it's just a sample of the Kimba hours and the Riders Up hours that they're dedicating to this.
I'll share it with everyone after the presentation.
And it's a pretty big lift. A lot of effort going into all this. Next slide. Now, in terms of the activity, the advisory board structure was created. I think that was a great idea on your all's part. And we have bylaws, we have an open meeting schedule, we have an operations plan, rules of use for the property, forest stewardship plan, thanks to Roy and his reach out to the Forestry Service, and water maintenance plan. So we've got these things in place now. You have a structure around this, and I think that's a great start. We've got a new name and a logo while preserving the Skullbuster name, which was important to preserve that, even though I think the general feeling was Skullbuster as a name for the area probably didn't represent the full use of the area, but the trails themselves have become somewhat known by that name. So that has been preserved through just naming the trails, the Skullbuster trails at Lytle's Fork. Road improvements, the Gaines pull-off areas, that's huge. And thanks to JR and his crew for doing that. If you haven't been out there, there's some pictures I'll show you. But it's been huge in terms of allowing people to get down Gaines. If you've been down Gaines, and I'm sure you have, it's very narrow. And
Temple off. And I know why Roy's clapping, because you know, how many times, Roy, have you had to back a horse trailer up Gaines to let somebody get by you, or vice versa? And JR and their crew, you know, for not very much money, you know, navigating those pull-offs, and they've added so much. If I was trying to pull a horse trailer down through there, I'd be clapping when I saw that too.
I agree completely. And when you think of the road without those pull-offs and what a drop-off it was a really dangerous situation. So I think it's a huge safety issue, and I think it's helped a lot, and verified by our horse guy back here. Trail improvements, Stockdale improvements. You know, Stockdale is a road that's pretty rough. You know, it's good. What we want to do and is think of Stockdale as an opportunity to provide access to disabled or low impact hiking, right? So if you've got children, you got a family, you just want to go for a walk through the woods, Stockdale's the perfect opportunity to do that. It's level, it's in okay shape, but we had some breaks in it and some really tough spots. And again, JR and his crew went out there and kind of smoothed those out. And I think that's great. I think it helps now for that low impact hike. I think we're still at a place though where if we want to include access for disabled people, I was out there just yesterday, walking a little bit down it, and it's just not good for that. And so I think to get access there, we might want to look at some more improvements on that. The routine maintenance, and I call it routine, but I'm not doing it, so it's easy for me to say routine, but the Kimba folks are always out there, trail clearing and so forth, and keeping everything the way it's supposed to be, and so are the Riders Up group. Again, you saw the picture of the machinery and so forth, just out there. The trail stewardship is a big responsibility, and again, it's amazing that it's been built to what it is through volunteerism at this point. I just don't know how sustainable, frankly, that model is going to be. Signage, I'll show you some of that. We've identified the property rules, trail identification, other improvements. We got benches, walking bridges, trail signs, a butterfly garden, all of this volunteers. A lot of this is David. He's been constructing a lot of this stuff and putting it out there gratuitously. You know, benches for people who might be walking along Stockdale and need a rest. Great idea, great addition to this this potential opportunity. And you know, again though, this is David doing this. So do we need to institutionalize that? Activities and events, we're pretty excited about this. And again, I'll show you some pictures, but the Bluegrass Mountain Cup race was a good success, and you've heard about that, so I won't go into detail. We've had school field trips out there, several children, and just roaming around the property and through the creek and all of that. And one of our board members, Andrew Burgoon, is a teacher, and he takes kids out there, and he says it's a fantastic opportunity to go out there. You have trail riding events that Riders Up has, requests for cross-country race by the Scott County High School cross-country coach. So they're asking us if they can do a race, so that's good. And all of this, I think, is just going to give us more exposure. We've reached out to a lot of agencies. We reached out to Mike and EMS during that event, and he's helped us understand some of the things that we might need to consider, just for safety reasons going forward. People getting lost out there and so forth, because the wayfinding right now is limited, frankly, because we just don't have the infrastructure for doing all of that at this time. The Forestry Service, joining landowners, we're trying to keep them in the loop. The American Chestnut Foundation, Roy's been in contact with, trying to get them to pay attention to our area and tell us how we can maybe reestablish the chestnut trees out there. And then tracking, working with Lori and tourism to figure out how many people are actually using the property. And, that's a tough thing. Obviously, we're not selling passes or anything, so it's tough. So anyway, next slide, please. And we'll just go to these are just some of the visuals I wanted you all to see. You can see the pull-offs there on the side of Gaines, which again are huge. You can see right where the car is ahead of that in that one picture. If those pull-offs weren't there, that would just be a drop-off. So it was a bad situation for large vehicles and trailers. The bench that David has constructed, there's the walking bridge with a culvert underneath it that's been constructed. Again, I think David is primarily responsible for that, if not completely. Next slide, please. Signage. We've got the signs up showing the recreation area. And by the way, those trees with that deer at the top, that's what we deem the official logo. So, there might be an opportunity just to use that as sort of some wayfinding stuff, maybe marking the boundaries of the property just by using that particular logo so people can see where they are. And then you've got the sign boxes. You see the rules are posted, that green sign on the north end, Stockdale, and then it's on all the entrances. You can see where the rules are being posted. So we're very pleased to have all that up. So again, these are beginnings. The rules are there, but honestly, we don't have an enforcement mechanism. So it just gives us the power if we ever need to do anything and there's a problem that we can attack. We have to decide at some point how that gets enforced and so forth. Next slide, please. Again, just some more things that have been put up. Next slide. This was the Bluegrass Mountain Cup race. Diverse participants, young, female, male, just a great event. I think we had some weather issues, but we had 60 participants, and it was a pretty good day for everybody. Next slide, please. These field trips, this is an actual photo, not a stock photo. This is an actual photo from a field trip from Andrew's visit there with his class, which I think is fantastic. Next slide. Trail riding events. You can see how many people this is drawing. I mean, you look at that big area down off of Gaines and see how that's filled with those horse trailers. And you can just see it's a very popular area for all of that. Next slide. So going forward, I realize, the whole group realizes, we have big I wanters, right? Everybody thinks, boy, we could do this and that and the other thing, and those ideas come fast and furious because they're great ideas. We also understand the reality and that we have to pace ourselves. So for the future, I think our priorities and what we would ask to think about either leading up to or as part of the budget discussions considering these expense items as a possibility. And that would include mowing, increasing the mowing scope and frequency. And most of the areas are in pretty good shape that we want mowed, and it's not a lot, but there are some areas where a decision has to be made. We're getting woody, and if you let it go too much longer, you won't be able to mow it, not without a lot of going in and clearing and that sort of thing. So we'd like to look at that. We'd like to look at permanent bathroom facilities. You saw the field trips and so forth and the events. That gets a little challenging because you have children from school going out there and there are no bathroom facilities out there. So some form of bathroom facilities would be ideal and would be, in our view, a priority. And we could, you can look at not necessarily, I forget what they're called, not pit toilets, vault toilets, things like that don't have to be on a system and so forth. And then a pavilion picnic shelter would be very nice. I think it would add a little additional element to the property once you get down there in terms of usage, instead of just the hikers, bikers, and horseback riders. Develop and maintenance of a website. We got to get some means for which people to find the place and learn about it. And I think the development is easy enough. I think it's the maintenance that is the real question. How do we do that? And I know we have volunteers within the group that are willing to provide some of that, but I think the whole thing ought to be in terms of signage, in terms of branding, the maintenance of the marketing, all needs to fit together in some way. And then finally, creating more events to increase public awareness, highlight the opportunities for use. I think that might be it. Is there another slide? Is that it? Okay, so that's it.
Could you go back to the last slide?
Yes.
Looking at locations for future consideration of, a pavilion, covered picnic shelter, a bathroom near it. Where would you all recommend that for consideration?
I would open that up to the folks that are here with me on the board because they know the property better than anybody. I think most of us feel like the large parking area on Gaines is probably the most central point of use, and that might be a good place for it. There's
where the gravel loop is in the bottom,
correct,
off of Gaines.
That's centrally located, but the challenge is that's in the floodplain. The big part of it is. And of course, the property's bought for a reservoir.
And that was going to be the bottom of the reservoir.
But if the reservoir ever built, then that's a problem. The places that are on high ground would be the headwaters up there close to Mike's house, Cobbage Pike on the ridge up there where the barns are, or out there on Gaines Road, you can go up on the hill just a little bit and be out of the floodplain as far as what we're doing, just natural water. But those are the challenges. The vault toilet doesn't require utilities. When we're talking about vault toilet, like you see at the national parks, and they just get cleaned out every so often.
Yeah.
Porta pots get turned over.
Yeah. But the other thing that you have sent emails and we've talked about is, the chestnut possible plantings and I would love for the court to consider how do we have a strategic plan to add more hardwoods and native trees over the next, let's just make a plan for the next 5 years and have a strategic plan. And then the other piece of biannual trail maintenance that is planned and and funded and done through the court, I think would be a very positive thing for the court to consider as well. And
So, did you get the forestry plan?
I don't think I've got
It was
that.
the rest of the court. It was Philip Horsley from Kentucky Forest Division came out with, and he wrote up a pretty good plan. Now, the chestnut trees, oddly enough, are not native to right here, which surprised the heck out of me. We've got the limestone here. Chestnut trees don't thrive in limestone. They thrive in sandstone. So if you look at a map, right here where we are, chestnut goes up east of us, south of us, and right up the west of us, up in Indiana. But right here, they didn't thrive here because of limestone, which I found interesting.
Yeah. But it'd be a great effort, like if we could work, strategically on reforestation and
There's all kinds of native trees we can put out here.
and doing that over the next several years, and in 25 years, people would look back and say, well, I'm glad they did that, and
Nobody's ever going to say that.
This is what Roy's talking about. And they actually put together a plan for us already.
well,
He's willing to follow up with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to get that for the court
Absolutely.
to review, and then, one other thing is, JR and I've been out there, and several of you all been out there, and all over the place. But the Riders Up group's done a great job. Kimba's done a great job with trail markings and then having maps. The one thing is there like a dedicated hiking trail that goes from one end and does a loop or something? I think that's what we ought to try to promote as well, and have it marked, and then, and then we have to do maintenance on it.
The horse people and bicycle people both are fine with hikers coming out there. So the trails are there for a hike, but are they dedicated hiking trails? The answer is no.
If you had a loop that, and JR and I have talked about this several times, if you had a loop that was marked as and it could go through a horse and the bicycle, but having someone that knows what they're doing kind of map this out, and then I agree 100%. I've gone out there several times with my dogs and walked Stockdale in the fall. The leaves are beautiful. It's just a nice place to stroll, and making it more accessible for those that might have disabilities. I think it's a thing we have to do and should do. And could we do that in phases? That's what JR and I have talked about. And
Just to paint you a picture, we've talked about doing a loop going up Stockdale and across the creek, coming back down for hikers. Lila's Fork is a blue line stream, which falls under the Corps of Engineers. We're not supposed to get in there and do anything to the bed of that stream without getting permission and getting the engineering done and everything. And so you've got bureaucratic stumbling block there that have to be dealt with to do that. It can be done, but it's just, you can't just go out there and do it.
Yeah.
What's the consequence if you ask forgiveness instead of permission?
I'm not going there on this. Is that the biggest thing, Dwayne?
You just gotta keep water flowing, that's all.
So flow over bridges are not too difficult to record, it just requires some modeling, ensuring that you're not impacting people up or down the stream.
And the people that we should talk to about that to help us is Strand and Associates, and I think we ought to take those steps. But what questions or comments does anyone have from the court?
I was just going to ask, what's like if you were making a list over the next 12 to 18 months, we're getting ready to go into budget for 25, 26. What is the low hanging fruit that we could really affect something so that we get the momentum continued and maybe even pick up the momentum faster?
It don't matter. Number one, you guys put $50,000 JR's budget last year for reservoir stuff, which we greatly appreciate. From our narrow perspective, me as Roy Cornett, horseback rider, we've been riding out there for 30 years doing what we want to do. That suits us just fine. If you don't want to do anything, that suits me. But if we're going to reach out and start bringing more people in, then these questions we're talking about are gonna have to be addressed. The money we've got on the table now is more than enough for the mowing. We've been volunteering mowing it, and then this last year, we contracted, and the contract guy did an excellent job, by the way. It was what, $3,000, I think, JR? Yeah. That was fine. If we want to expand on that, we can do that. The expansion on that is a challenge, because some of these meadows, like Temple was talking about, do we want to mow them, or we want to leave them alone and let them come back to forest? And that's one of the things the forestry guy talked about. His recommendation is leave them alone. Let them go back to forest. Less maintenance, more canopy for trees and stuff. So I don't have a straight answer for you.
So I think the low-hanging fruit is the social media push.
Yep.
Some temporary bathrooms, even if it is just porta potties.
Yeah.
Because you go out with your kids, it's a different situation than going out with my horse, right? Especially if you have young children. A place where they can go to the bathroom, giving social media so there are maps so they know where to park. Most of the hikers that park on Stockdale gets really full. There's plenty of room on Gaines, but I don't think the general public knows they can park there. The general public doesn't know they can cross the creek and walk on the horse trails on the other side of Stockdale. Pushing the education piece along basic amenities, I think, is our next logical low-hanging fruit.
Tourism's willing to help, by the way. Lori Saunders is on the board, and tourism, she's got all kinds of expertise out there, and they're willing to help out in that regard as far as.
Well, I also wonder if there's maybe a class or a group at any of the universities, state universities, Georgetown College, whatever, that this could be kind of a thesis, a project for them that they could use and help, because I know that I think it was University of Cincinnati helped on the entranceway into the city, helped design that, and you know, if there was.
I was involved in that.
Yeah.
Just what it was along the creek and the spring there, from the spring down to the creek is what it was. They put together kind of a corridor, if you will, how that needs to be redone.
So one other thing, I had a conversation with Drew Beckett, and he's got an employee that's interested in doing some nature programming down there. I think that's the piece that we're not talking about or haven't talked about a lot, is the wildlife piece.
Yep.
So the benefits of clearing some of those meadows is it creates different habitats for different species down there. So designating which ones we want to keep clear, how we want to rotate that, so we're creating habitat for all the different wildlife that is coming back into Scott County. And when I first moved down there, you occasionally see deer. Now I occasionally see a bobcat. So the wildlife is getting diverse, and it's thriving, and making sure that that continues as we add more use. And then adding the educational piece. So Georgetown Parks and Rec is willing to do some classes. I've talked to the staff at Raven Run. They're willing to help get those going. So that's another thing that we could do to get the general public seeing some of that stuff. I think you're right, though, coming up with a master plan for the recreational area if we move forward.
Wouldn't what, JR and Joe were talking about with the walking trail, though, wouldn't that really be the big impact as far as volume of bringing in new people? I mean, guys like me and with my family, or, just the random non-biker, non-horse person that wants to go to visit the area, I don't know where the heck I'm at when I'm walking around right now, when I go up there, so.
Judge and myself, one of our thoughts was to go on the boundary of the property and have like a 20, 25-foot path cleared out good along where impossible to get lost, and bring it back into Stockville Road, and maybe 2 phases, and it'd be a simple trail that you can keep mowed down. And
You have to be careful about where you go, because some of that place is too steep along the boundary there. When the fences were all put in, it was a clear area. We used to ride that, but it was straight up down the fall line in a lot of places, and which is in trailer size not good. But
we traveled them on a side by side. And,
okay.
we were.
But I think what Dwayne's saying is, as well, is, like if we had better social media and better website, the trail just across Stockdale is what you're talking. I mean,
Just any kind.
just showing people, hey, you can park here, and Stockdale goes from here to here, and you can,
I feel secure that I'm not going to get lost and be having.
But what JR
get me or somebody.
yeah, but we could do it in phases, like what JR's saying would be good. Rob,
Going off what Dwayne said, when you had your map up there, so I pulled it up. I use the PBA site a lot and the plan zoning map a lot, when I'm looking up properties, and on the PVA site, it still shows all these individual properties that are owned by the county. Is there any way we can do an overlay so that that whole thing, you know, because if somebody's just coming in to look,
That's
it'd be
good.
nice if they seen the whole thing instead of just all these individual properties.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No,
And it,
There is
yeah.
oh, we've got some maps.
Well, and I think,
Plains Plains I'll get one.
and I think you're hitting on the whole awareness piece. I think it's got to look like something that you're going to want to come to. So you've got these trails marked on the bike side, which are very nice and very attractive. I'm sure we don't have the map on the horse side, do we?
Not as good as McKimba.
Yeah.
That's something we need to do.
So maybe figuring out a way to map those trails and have something that we could actually display showing all of that might be a big benefit as well, to try to, you know, again, show people what we got out there. And, yeah.
34 miles of trail out there between horse and bike currently.
34 miles.
But the thing is, like guys like me are scared to get on it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
Yeah,
walk.
so that.
'Cause you don't know where you're going.
It would be, so that the creek is a bit of a problem that we talked about, but it would be easy enough if you could do 2 flowovers, so you could have a place at Gaines where you could cross, and a place down near the church where you could cross. So you could have a loop on one side that is paved Stockville, and then another loop that you get across and come back the same bottom. And then all the other trails feed off of that.
Yeah, I do.
And this would be more in depth for a future meeting of the master plan of everything. But I mean, you know, I think signage like what you're talking about is, okay, so I'm good for about 2 miles. I'm not saying I am. I'm good for much more than that, but I'm just saying, if somebody says I'm good for 2 miles, then name that section, you know, for 2 miles and have listed, you know, yeah.
yeah, the loops, yeah,
I got a loop here, and I know this is 2 miles. I got a loop here, and I know it's going to be 3.
exactly.
And kind of the frame of reference I use is like, if you go on alltrails.com, it'll say, this is a 2 mile loop, it's easy, moderate, and if you could show, just like they do, like here's your route, it's 2.1 miles, moderate, and you could say, here's parking, you know, and that, but, you know, I think everything that you all are talking about makes sense. I think the court needs to consider, you know, like, here's phase 1, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Here's phase 2, going to do the next things, and you know, but some of that stuff does not cost a lot of money, and I love the logo that you all have. I think the logo, you know, when I looked at it again today, it catches your eye, and it's, you know, I think we've got a great opportunity to set a foundation for a nice destination recreational area for our community and the region.
One other thing, the dozer that was in there, that dozer was not out like it's for. That's a Swaco trail dozer. It's 4 feet wide, diesel engine, weighs enough to where it's got plenty of mass to get some traction and stuff. You can put a ripper blade on it. It's got a 6-way blade. Of course, JR knows what I'm talking about. He and I have talked about these, but that is the ideal machine for trail construction. Because if you're going along the fall line of a hill, you tilt that thing where all the water runs off the trail, because water is one of the main problems on trails. So you can get where you're not having to worry about ditching and stuff. Those things cost around $100,000. So it's on your budget thing. If we had one of those for new trails or enhancing the trails we've got, that would be phenomenal. The short version of that is a mini excavator.
Yeah.
Welcome to the one you were in. Can we just use that one?
That was what that was. One I was thinking about buying myself for $22,000. The guy chickened down and sell it to me.
But I bet you could find a used model of that, and there's other options. The road department's got some equipment that, you know, but you're right, having a dedicated piece of equipment like that would help do trail maintenance would be a very positive thing.
Do you utilize, you all utilize the detention center staff for this, for mowing, clearing,
I don't think we have. I mean, we've just contracted it
Seems
out
like
at
a
this
good,
point.
they
And-
help with,
and what-
they help with everything else, so.
We've been doing volunteers strictly, both us and the bikers both, up till this past year, we contracted mowing, but
But if the advisory board went to, if we got together and got with Darren and said, hey, this spring, could we have 2 days where a crew came and they worked on this half-mile piece?
Mike's
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, like, they help with Ward Hall, and that's
Yeah.
I mean, like, we actually own this land, so the county
Yeah.
owns it, so I think I'd say use them many days as you want.
But I think
a good
that, and JR would be a great, liaison with Darren as well, so,
I'll make a comment too.
yes, Kelly.
So, you guys are doing great. Man, this has really been better than I thought it would, putting this board together, the ideas. And I would just make a suggestion, because in my mind, like, having a bathroom facility out there is just a big deal. Whether you have groups of people or older people, everybody doesn't want to go out in the woods and go to the bathroom. So I would just make a suggestion, maybe by this spring, we go ahead and look at putting some sort of bathroom facility out there, whether even if it's just a porta potty for now to see how it stands up. And if that doesn't work, then put something else permanently.
I think we Googled it, what, 35,000 what we came up with for a vault toilet, is that what we found?
But the porta johns, you gotta be smart about them and strap them in real good.
Yeah, the vault toilets,
Just to get through.
concrete and pretty permanent and.
Yeah.
They,
That's 35,000 for one?
yep. So what it is you dig a big hole in the ground, you put basically a container down there that gets pumped out occasionally, and then of course the structure on top of it.
I mean,
I'd say it costs more than that, to be honest.
Well, some people say, oh, surely it won't cost that, others more. On the federal side, I've seen figures as much as 100,000.
Yeah, I'd say it's gonna cost more than that.
Everything costs more federal side now.
But like location of where you put it is a big thing. But Kelly,
I don't think you're gonna take a group of kids. It's hard to take a group of kids or students and not have something.
Right.
Some kid's got an emergency, doesn't want to.
Right.
For the porta johns, like $100-something.
I was gonna say, for 35,000 for one, you could have multiple locations.
I think I'd go with what Wayne said. Strap one down there as
Portage
best we
City.
can, put it in a location.
well, you can pour
And I don't know-
like what would be wrong with first step being pouring a few pads and then building the like just a what would you call it? Just a screen to strap them to something that you could strap them to.
So they're not just out there
Right.
in the open.
Well, and that allows a low-cost ground truth, like which one's getting used more, where do we need one, do we try one in the middle of Stockdale Road, see if there's a need mid-trail. It allows some flexibility to see where it's used. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, I got a question. Like, how do you feel about vandalism out there? Has it ever been an issue, or do you think it potentially could be? Or
So, Mike, historically vandalism's been minimal. Typically you have vandalism from preteen and early teen boys. It's just a reality. There's not a good way for them to get out there. I think as it gets more popular, it could be a problem. I think as long as we're slow stepping it and as we grow, we'll just have to deal with it.
yeah, I mean, I'm
Probably
just
less
saying
because
that.
you don't have a neighborhood like.
Right, it's
you know,
not
where-
close to anything. Anytime I've ever been out there, it's usually just people like myself that are out there to do something. And,
There's not a whole lot out there for them to vandalize. Some signs and stuff, but I mean,
Right.
why are they gonna drive out there? I mean,
right.
but what they're gonna do is vandalize a tree, spray paint. I mean,
But those that live there and drive by, so if I see a car that's been overnight, that's obviously not a hunter, I'll call dispatch and just say, hey, the sheriff's department does a great job of running down and just making sure everything's okay. And I think we've all gotten accustomed to, hey, we're driving past the parking lot, that looks weird, let me make a phone call, and that has helped keep it down.
And I think, the things you're talking about, like baby stepping into it and having the porta potties out there and so forth. And we talked about trash receptacles, and we elected not to recommend those. Because again, without the monitoring and the maintenance and so forth, you're just gonna end up with piles of garbage around in certain areas in a place that frankly, it's not a tremendous problem right now.
Until you have someone that they're dedicated to,
At some
hey,
point.
3 times a week we're going to empty those out. Then
Exactly.
I agree. So I think next logical things is like, as we get closer to budget time, that we include a couple meetings and sit down together to make proposal of putting into the budget dedicated funds for, you know, the low-hanging fruit, like what we've talked about, and have this is our first year, this is our second year, and our third year.
That sounds great.
So, any other comments?
Just echoing what they said about the Porta Johns would be a good start, and then you see where they're used and how that works, and if we graduate to a facility, build a building, we'll know that. That'd be a great start. But also, are people still deer hunting?
100%.
Yeah.
People still bow hunt.
There's no gun hunting.
There's no gun hunting, and we need to keep it that way. But there's bow hunting, and I think it's pretty well popular. You know, there's a lot of people that come through the office and get the little pass like they've always done for the last decade, and I think it gets a lot of traffic, which it should, because it needs to be. So.
Well, I still get some complaints from surrounding property members where people are hunting on the county property and they climb the fence and do all that good stuff. I don't know how you stop that.
Along that vein, there's more and more deer stands being put up out there,
Yeah,
and
they
they're leaving them
complain.
up.
Yeah.
And if they stay on there long enough, they wind up girdling the tree. We've talked about the board, they probably need to make them come down every year. The fiscal court would probably be good if you guys said, hey, they gotta come down every year, just make an official thing. Just
Good point.
No, I agree with that. Well, we'll be in touch, and appreciate the presentation. Any other questions? Thank you all very much.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks, and I'm excited about what it could be, the prospects. So, if there's any other business from anyone, Chris, John, Chip, anyone else, Mark, Sheriff, Mike, if not, then we will, as we shared, I would say we need to break into two groups. One group go to EMS, one group go to the sheriff's office. They're waiting on us. JR's going to go out to the sheriff's office. I'll run out to EMS first. And we're going to walk through, and you can see firsthand the progress of the construction. And if you have questions, we can get those to the appropriate groups.
I did want to bring up one thing. I have talked to Mark a couple of times for visiting down at the coroner's office, just going down and seeing what they got going on. And there may be a need for a use of a generator down there. With that cooler down there now, we lose power in the summertime for that cooler. So maybe during the budget cycle,
No,
we can get with Mark.
absolutely.
Putting that in there.
All right.
It doesn't have to be a big, huge generator. Small generac, you know.
Just whatever the capacity is needed on keeping that. No, that's a good point. And we'll, Mark, just if you can do some footwork with some estimates. All right. All right. Well, with that said then, who wants to go to sheriff's office first? One, two. All right. And then Rick will go to sheriff's. And then the rest of us will go to EMS. And oh, you can pull. I think you can pull down in there now. It's all paid. You can pull down in there at EMS and sheriff's office.